tonight I am talking with my good friend and neighbor, Mr. Parris.
Hey,
Uh,
how you doing?
Good man. Thanks for saying yes to this conversation. Um, I have these conversations because I think that a lot of men out there could use the knowledge, the information that comes out of the conversation um, about parenting. And you have experience with parenting. Would you like to share with us how far you go back and how many children you have?
I have, well, I've parented three children, two biological, and one, I call my son, but I didn't, not biologically. So I guess I started as far as back in 2000. So what is that, 20 years ago, when he was 5. So he's yeah, he just turned actually 26. Um, so I guess it started 20 years ago. So I guess I have 20 years of experience
That
in
is,
all facets of parenting, I guess.
yeah, that's unbelievable. I have 13 years of experience. 20 years is
Yeah.
quite a long time.
20 years
Um,
of experience and 20 years of marriage. So
wow.
I should be able to write a book at this point.
So maybe I mean, what if we started with your dad? That would be
Mm.
really awesome. Like, what was dad like? What was your relationship like?
I mean, I
And
didn't
also
have,
maybe, huh?
I never had a relationship with my dad. So
Oh,
that's what I think. I mean, it was a great lesson because of that. I think that's enabled me to be. That's probably one of the greatest gifts to some degree. Is the absence of a father. So made me a better father because I know what that feels like.
yeah. Did can you tell us when was he around for a few years?
No,
So, oh, not
never,
oh,
never,
okay.
never around. So.
Do you know who he is and where he might be?
Yeah, I've met him twice, but it's just it's kind of hard to explain because it feels so foreign to me that anybody would be that kind of. Hold on one second, I've got another call coming. Um, One second, let me just. It feels so absent to me that somebody would be that distant and kind of having children out there and not be interested or curious to how they may be. So it's kind of hard to relate. Like I've met him on maybe no more than a handful of occasions, and every time I've met him, it just didn't really feel like anything. It's not like he was like, oh, well, I was never around, and here's this, or this is the reason why. So it's kind of like I've accepted that that's just how he is. So it's kind of hard to. It's just a rough thing. That part of it. Like I don't know what it feels like to have a father, if that makes any sense. It's not. I don't have any animosity. I feel grown. I don't feel like, oh, I need a dad to like help me or talk to me about anything. But the absence of it just feels very foreign to me. Like the idea of a father in that facet, I can't imagine what it would be.
Yeah. I, I did. I probably still do feel a great deal of animosity towards my father because I also cannot understand how someone
Mm,
could have children and suddenly, or have not suddenly, but have children and completely not care what.
mm,
And in the case of my father, he had four that he
mm,
that he, from my point of view, abandoned. And I asked him once. I asked him, hey, what
mm,
happened? And he looked at me and he said, I was like 20 years old, 21 maybe,
mm,
and he said, I said, what happened? And he said, I did the best I could,
mm,
and which it was, and to this day, it's not an answer that I care for at all. I mean,
mm.
because my question remains, well, how can your very best be your absolute absence?
Yeah. No, no, I could get that. I mean, probably throughout there were years, there were definitely times I probably had animosity when I was younger or confusion about it. And yeah, I mean, there was a range of different emotions from not knowing a person and then meeting them for the first time and then your expectations are not met and then realizing that this person may not care. Like, I've probably been through all those things. I mean, from time to time, I've called him like just in my adult years, just more for him because to be honest with you, I've to myself, I've kind of forgiven that part of him. Like, like he's had even more kids. Like I've met once. I mean, my only regret is probably that I didn't maintain a stronger bond with my brothers when I met them, when I had the opportunity. But then he's never helped to kind of like, so if I called him and asked him for my brothers, he would be like, "Oh, well, that was a long time ago. I don't know where they are, or they've changed their address." So I've come to understand that that's who he is.
Yeah.
But once you accept that, it's just like, yeah, it's strange. Maybe it's just the way I process things, but I've never really. It's fine. I respect him as my father, and I would call him to see how he is. But I'll be honest with you, like, if, God forbid, I don't wish this on anybody, but if he passed tomorrow, it probably wouldn't stop anything in my life. Like, there's that little feeling, like,
Yeah.
he's had that much impact on my life, and like I say, that's why I say the positive from it is that I feel like I've kind of broke that cycle, if you will. So like going forward in my life, I think the impressions I've given, because maybe he didn't have a father in his life, and maybe it had a negative, or maybe he had a father and it was a negative father. I mean, these are all things I don't know. I have no idea of. But the point of the matter is, something was broken there, and I feel like I was able to fix it in going forward in my life. So being a father from a young age, and and was it even like being a father of a child that that I adopted um, was challenging because it wasn't something that you had really had like the preparation for. I feel like fatherhood and parenthood in some degree. Think of any other animal. Like most animals, they have kids, and like a horse has a kid and it walks in like what, like 4 hours or something in the first half an hour. We have like 9 months of knowing you're gonna have a kid, and then you have like another year before they even speak. So I think you have a lot of time to prepare as a father. But when you meet again a relationship and there's a child already, it's a little bit less time to kind of you're kind of jumping in wherever they're at. You know what I mean? Oh, he was 5, okay, that's where we're at. Like
Yeah.
So that took a lot, and I think I was quite at a young age at the time. I mean, I was 20 at that time, which felt very young for me because my wife did have her first child quite young. So it did feel a little bit premature, but with time, we all grew together, and you get better at it as you do it. I'm sure I made mistakes along the line like anybody, but I think I did a pretty good job. You know.
Yeah. Did you did you early on or even later read a book on parenting?
No, not really, because here's the thing. Like I was raised by a very progressive mother that I felt like I could kind of. It's hard to explain, but in my older year, as I got older, I could see that her parent, what I agreed with in her parenting, and I'm not like everybody might have like perceptions of their parents, and like they may agree with it wholeheartedly because it's just their parent, but I do honestly think that my mum raised myself and my sister very fairly, very progressive from where she was from. She was a woman from the West Indies and moved to England when she was 20, and I felt like just from her actions and just seeing how she was, it was it was a great example. It was almost like a roadmap, and I had enough. I don't know. I feel like I've always had enough sensibility to know to pick and choose what are the things I like about that and what I don't like and what I think would affect the person, what doesn't. Now I'm not perfect, but I do think that I had a good, a decent upbringing, and it's funny because I'd put something on Facebook recently about Father's Day, and I think I talked about something like that, like saying that was one of the greatest gifts is not having a father. It showed me how to be a father. And a friend of mine, he was like, "You may not remember this, but when we was younger, you stood up for me in school." He goes, "You were always sensible." He goes, "That's one thing he was remember." I hardly remember even at school. A very vague memory of our interaction. But I do think that I had this a sort of sensibility about moving in life. I don't know. I just always felt I had a good grasp on it,
Mm.
and may have not been gifted with everything, but that, I think I always had a decent amount of common sense, and when parenting came along with being a husband, obviously it came with challenges, and there are things that yeah, we all wish we could have done better. And it's like you're a parent is one thing, but you also have a life, you also have a marriage, and these are the other things that kind of shape how you may be as a parent, you know.
Mm.
But yeah, no, didn't read, but to the original question, didn't read anything, but just tried to kind of take from the things that I think shaped me. And one thing I didn't want to do, and wasn't done to me, is like my mom didn't fill me up with all these ideas of, okay, you should be like this, and you should like this thing, and you should like that thing. Like I was allowed to grow and absorb the world as I saw it. And that's the same thing with our kids. They have their own opinions. We talk about stuff, some things we don't agree with, you know, but they're able to have their own opinions, and we let, for the most part, that's what it is, unless it's something that's like we feel is like illegal or crazy or what we perceive as crazy. But for the most part, we allow them to be their own human beings, you know. And that's the best thing. One of the things I think is important about parenting, to me, degree, there has to be a level of freedom.
How was it? How was it? So, I mean, you must have been pretty head over heels about this girl to also want to take on her 5-year-old.
Yeah, I mean, that it was a complicated situation because we were very young at the time, and I had just moved here from England, and that had certain complications as well. Yeah, we were. I think we had and I still think it's still my best friend. We've been married for 20 years, and it's the person who I love to hang out with the most. I don't. So, yeah, I would say we were like definitely had a connection, and we were from two different places. But even though we were from two different places, we were two different countries, but felt like we were from the same place in those two different countries. So we kind of had a commonality that made us both feel comfortable. And her having a child, I didn't really see it at the time as a negative thing. And maybe I didn't really take on the extreme, like, because as the relationship progressed, it had its challenges, because how you approach being a father is different with a child that may have a biological dad, even if he's in the picture or kind of out the picture, which he was. It's still a different approach to some degree. You have to treat it with a different. Um, it's different. There's the love I have for each of my kids, and each of my kids have been in somewhat different situations. It's love, but it's all a different love. It's a different type of love, which
Yeah, you must have as a stepdad coming in, you must have to find a balance, right? Like I think the difference between a bio son and and a stepson is, from the bio son's perspective, you're the dad. There's no,
mm,
I mean, this is how I'm imagining, and you tell me what where you differ. Um, so from my point of view, I'm like, I'm the dad. I've been here since the beginning. It's me. I'm gonna try to figure this guy out. Oh, here's another one. Yeah, I don't have anyone. I don't have this thought that maybe somebody else. There's somebody else out there, right? But I hear a lot of stepdads saying things like, well, I don't get involved, or I don't, right? Like it's like hands off, you know. But how did you do it?
yeah. Well, here's the thing. I understand both. I can understand why some dads may feel like that, and it has a lot to do with what the situation is when you get there, because it's like with anything that you may adopt or inherit. It's as it was. So, for instance, sometimes it was hard to implement. I didn't want to There's a thing of boundaries and overstepping boundaries. There's that part of it, and then there's also the part of like things are pre-existing when you got there. So some of things, it may be hard to change, or you may not want to change it, or because you've always got to remember, like, if you meet a woman or a partner and they have a child already, there might be a time when you might not, say for instance it didn't work out between Marilyn and I, my wife and I. Um, we would have, she still has to continue being a parent, and it's not I don't necessarily have to continue being a parent. You don't have that same situation with, well, hopefully you wouldn't have that with a, a biological child. But the only thing is, I mean, how I feel now, because it's been 20 years, no matter what happened, I think over time he will always be my son because of the bond we have. But that took time. You don't have that initially when you're coming into a situation. You don't know that you're going to be 20 years in. So yeah, you definitely. I would say boundaries is one of the things. Yeah, like when you have your own, your child, you don't really have anybody to tell you. I mean, with your partner, you can kind of come up with ideas of how you want to raise your child, but with that situation, it feels a bit to me. It would be a bit weird to come in and be like, well, now this is what we're doing, and sometimes that I would say being a stepfather is probably one of the, I've had three extremes of parenthood, like all three. Like I've had a stepchild that I've come into a situation, and I've had a child that doesn't live with me, and that's overseas, which has a whole different set of parent negotiations that have to happen. So, yeah, I would say boundaries probably would be the key word with that one.
Like identifying them. What are they?
Yeah,
To
like what are there, and
so you can have a good relationship with the child, and so that you can also continue to have a good relationship with the child's mother.
exactly, and it could be. I mean, look, I have family members. Like I have a nephew that has a stepfather, and they've had contention, and I had to sometimes sit him down and explain from the stepfather's point of view, why he may be the way he is, and sometimes things might seem cold or whatever, but it's not. It might not be that, but it's a very tricky situation when you're dealing with a child and the mum, and they may have, you don't want to cross boundaries on so many levels. It's the mum and the child's relationship. There's also the child and the father's relationship. There's also the mother and the father and them as a separate entity. So there's a lot of things, and I think at 20 was a very, it took a lot, and even when you've got, maybe there's another parent that doesn't, you know that may not be cooperative. It's all good if everybody could be happy families, but that's very rarely the case. So, but I think overall, my involvement in his life has been substantial, and he always tells me that. And I think that's one of my proudest things, is that I was able to come in and make a difference. And and he has the option. Like he calls me Parris. He doesn't call me Dad, but he calls me on Father's Day. So he's my son. I call, but it doesn't need necessarily have to have the title of, like, he's always welcome to have my name at any time, but those are his decisions. I can't make those decisions for him.
Yeah, yeah. So I know that you have a daughter. What's it like? What are some
I have
interesting
two
differences?
daughters.
You have two daughters. Oh, that's right, that's right. But one, yeah, but the one that's the older one is the one that lives overseas.
Obviously, yeah,
And
yeah.
what I wanted to get from you is the one that lives with you. How it's some interesting. What are some interesting differences between a daughter and a son?
um that's a strange one, because I have a daughter that is very, I would say, a lot into some of the things that my son was, as far as, it's only as she gets older you see probably more womanhood setting in, and fashions and stuff like that. I don't know. It's weird, because it's a tough one, because I never look at it like that. As far as, like, obviously, that, no, gender aside, as people, they're very different people to some degree, and as people, I'd say my daughter is a lot closer than I am, because she has biological traits of myself, which are undeniable, which are very strong in her, So having a person that kind of is close to you, we have a certain understanding. Like my son, like, he knows me just from the time we've spent, like, the years he may know me as a person, and know what I like, what I don't like. but I guess my daughter can feel what I like and don't like. She has that in her, you know, and I think that's the difference. As far as raising them, it's yeah. I think you learn as you go on. So each child probably gets some things are a little bit easier with the first child. Some things are a little bit harder. But yeah, as far as difference, it's kind of a tough one to answer as far as like direct difference of raising a boy and a girl. I never really saw it as that. You know, I kind of still feel like the same things apply to a degree. You know, obviously, I still feel like they have to have a certain amount of freedom. I still want them to have a certain amount of independence. You know, you don't want to be obviously. You know, you may feel that there's more potential threats to having a girl than a boy, but you know, aside from those small things, I kind of raised them within. I still expect the same from them. You know.
Yeah. How 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 much do you worry about your daughter because she's a girl, right? I mean, that's one of my.
Yeah.
I only have two boys, and I mean, I always know where they are.
Mm.
I always worry about them. I try to teach them as much as I possibly can. How to stay safe, how to um, make sure they don't put themselves in weird situations. I still send them, like, when one has to go to the bathroom. If we're at a restaurant and I cannot see where the bathroom is, if one wants to go to the bathroom, the other one, I tell the other one he has to go with his brother. you know,
Yeah. I mean, well, how old are they now?
12 and 13.
Yeah. See, here's my conflict because yeah, obviously as a girl, I think there's obviously there are some. I feel it's weird, but I do feel like there are more apparent dangers for women just because of the amount of cases and things I've heard involving young girls. And there have been a lot about young boys. I don't want to dismiss that as well, but I do feel like there's been, to me, an overwhelming amount more, you know, of young girls that have been inappropriately touched or things like that, and that does worry you, and that's always a concern, and that's always been a thing with us as parents is just being able to, like, the minute you think something doesn't even feel right, you have to be able to talk to us so that we can protect you from that. Um, Now, yeah, and I think as a boy, maybe we haven't had as much of those conversations, like nowhere near as much conversations with that with a boy. Now, at the same hand, I feel like it's very important for children to have a certain amount of freedom. They should be able to, like, and it's weird because apart from that side of it, which seems to be a lot of it happens with family members and things like that, I've read outside in the outside world, like your kid going to school or the chances of them getting killed and raped or it's like it's so little. Like but it's the most terrifying thing that can happen. But it's like the chances of it happening are like, how often do you hear that a kid gets kidnapped? It's not a lot. Like for the
Right.
amount of kids there are in the world, we're talking about the whole world. You know what I mean? More people. There's more school shootings than that happen. You know,
Well,
but
so the research on this, the research on child sexual abuse is that, like you said, it's primarily fathers, uncles, brothers, stepfathers, stepbrothers, and friends, good friends of the family. So
yeah,
what is it? 90% of the children that are abused, whether boys or girls, knew the perpetrator.
yes,
So I'm with you on that. But I think that, for even if that's the case, I still ever since my boys were tiny, I always make sure that, well, to lessen the odds of anything happening anyway. Even though, like you said, it's a myth that it's a stranger that shows up and says, "Do you want some candy?" Even though that is a myth, that would be the majority. It does happen, and there are strangers in bathrooms, and there
yeah,
are
and
strangers
it
on.
does. But so here's my going back to my point, and this is my conflict because I think there's a danger. Obviously, there's an inherent danger of, like, obviously of any predators, and God forbid anything happens to any of our children and anybody that's had that. I'm sure. That, I mean, I think it was in the 70s. There was a parent that let their child go to school on their own. I think it was late 70s or 80s, and they let their child go to own. There was seven for the first time. The child begged, "Oh, let me go to school on my own. I want to," and they did it, and then that was the time that happened. And I'm sure they feel terrible, but like it's not an everyday occurrence. Now where's my conflict comes is that I do believe by us having this overbearing kind of, I've got to make sure everything's good with the child. We're affecting our youth. I'm telling you, we're affecting them greatly. We're taking away their level of independence. We're taking away their level of being able to. We're taking away things from them. Like it's like parents that say, "Oh, I don't want them to go out. I'd rather them be inside playing video games because I know they're safe." They're getting hurt in other ways, and I believe that wholeheartedly.
Parents that are doing that. Parents that have said that. Rather than
we live in the neighborhood. How often do you see? You see a lot of kids riding around on bikes all the time before Corona.
But what you said that parents are saying that that their kids, they would rather have their kids inside playing video games.
Yeah, I think that's the notion.
My kid. Let me just say this, because my kids naturally gravitated towards gaming because I don't know, that's how it is. I'm not a gamer. When Atari came out, when I was I don't know, how old was I? 6, 7 years old. Atari came out. I didn't care for it. I didn't care for it at all. It looked cool, but it wasn't my thing. And I'm 47 now, and I still don't care about gaming. But my boys somehow gravitate. And I ask them all the time, hey, you guys want to go biking with me? They say no. Do you want to go skateboarding? They say no. Do you want to do this? They say no. I'm trying to get them out there all the time. They say no to me. Fortunately, one of them now. Yeah. So, but my point being is, I haven't heard any parent in my life during my lifetime say, "Hey, Ricardo, I'm keeping my kids indoors."
No, not true. No, yeah, but that's not. No, I have, but I'm not saying. But we might not do it in the way that's as blatant as that. But I'm just saying, just by nature of them having video games, just by the nature of your kids staying at home, my kid doesn't have anybody to go out with. I'm not saying in particular, but I'm just saying this is a fact. This is not. This is not like a theory. This is a fact.
What?
Kids
No.
stay at home. Kids like do you think there's more kidnappers in the world than there used to be?
Well, no.
Per ratio.
No, I don't. Because I don't think that we're. Hold on, I want to show you something. Remember when I asked you what books you had read for parenting? Around the time that my kids were really little, I picked up this book.
Yeah.
Awesome book by this woman, Jen McGonigal, and she talks about why it says here why games make us better and how they change the world. So when my boys gravitated towards gaming, I didn't say no. So I don't. They're not gaming because because if I were to push them outside, they'd hate me. But I also know, according to Jane, that gaming is awesome. So I think that if I can figure out the balance, then I'm okay with them being inside.
Well, here's the thing. Let me tell you. All right, this is who wrote that book?
Jane McGonigal.
Jane McGonigal. I don't know much about it, but look, here's the thing. I know video games. I was there from pretty much the beginning of video games. Look around my basement. I have all systems dedicated. Like, nobody knows more about games than I do. You know what I'm saying? Like, but I don't sit there and play them every day. But I know about video games. But it has, and I don't want to blame video games. But there's been a shift of how, and it's not only just video games. It's the phones. It's the internet. It's social media. There's so many things that have stopped our youths, and we haven't. That take away certain things from our youth that me and you have and they don't have, and that's why why do you think I do believe there's a reason why there's more anxiety with young teenagers. There's a lot more things that are apparent now, because do you think people have a better time socializing now than they used to? Or
well, I think that you're drifting away from the parenting conversation into a couple of ideas that I really have not done enough research on. So I can't answer because I don't read a lot about that. What I do read a lot about is fathers are important in their children's lives. Parents in general, mothers and fathers are important in children's lives. I again also if you're saying that your personal research shows that parents are keeping their children at home gaming to keep them safe. That I have never heard before, but if you're saying that, you've at least heard one.
Well, yeah, There's even a book called the Coddling of the American Mind. How Good Intentions. You should read that. That's a good book that I've drifted over a little bit and I've read it. But it's Coddling of America. How Good Intentions and Bad Ideas are setting up a generation for failure. You should read that. And because you got to
Yeah,
remember, the
I,
thing about it is it might not be about like. But here's the thing: I have played video games from like the impetus of video games. I am quite, in touch with how I'm 42 years old. You know what I'm saying? So and I work in an industry with a lot of young people. Like so, I do see these trends and changes. You know what I'm saying? Regardless of how much there might be research, but I'm not saying that it's a fact. But I do think that like as a parent, and not to drift off it too much, but I do think there's a change with our adults, and a lot of things are going to change with just the way we are in this world today. There are some obvious changes there.
I think that I mean I think we have to go back to I think we need to go back to parenting, but to your point, I'd like to say that every generation for the last 100, possibly 200 years has been different than the previous.
No, I
I
agree.
think I think it's fair to say that if we go back, I don't know, 300 to 500 years, things didn't change between generations, right? There were no real technological advances that made your son was like that's why your son was likely to do what you did. There wasn't as much stimulus. There wasn't television, obviously. Let's say 500 years ago, there wasn't a lot going on. There was the farm, and if you were a cattle farmer or whatever, however that works, that's what your son did because there was no change. And so what we have going forward, let's say for argument's sake, 120 years ago,
Mm.
1900s, and you have the Industrial Revolution, and you have the car, and then you have radio, and then you have TV, and then you have whatever gaming, internet, the phone. So yeah, technology has made it like so that every new generation is completely different. Meaning that, for instance, the what you may be training or helping your daughter with now is not a future that you have any idea what it might look like, and neither does she. Meaning, neither one of you knows what you're preparing her for. Whereas 500 years ago, you knew that you were preparing your son to live the life that you had lived. So it was easier then, but in that regard, like to know what you had to teach because you had lived it. And now everything's changed so much. But I'm against the idea of slowing down technology or
No,
innovation.
I don't think we should slow it down at all. Like, and that's not what I believe.
Yeah.
But what I was saying, that what to my point, regardless of video games or everything, I do think that there's a certain freedom though that we have to give kids. But that was my original point,
Yeah.
is that, like for instance, to go to the bathroom or whatever it is, even if they giving a child, say, hey, I need this package going to the post office, that still needs to happen, right? Whether I drive or they walk, just giving them these responsibilities in the outside world. I think that's, to me, as fatherhood, I think that's a very important thing. Regardless of video, I play video games. I use technology. I'm very technologically savvy. So even though like technology in this is exponentially grown super fast in the last 50 years. But I understand that's thing. You can't take back what's already started.
Yeah.
And I'm a huge believer in going forward. But I do believe, as parent, I mean, one thing that is important to me with all my kids, and I try to do is just responsibility is
Yeah.
very important, and giving them a little bit of freedom to just dip their toe in the water, without, hey, you're gonna drown.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I think I'm understanding what you're trying to say. But I think that you're saying it as your thinking versus a generalization. I think that that's where I'm getting confused. Now, also, just because while I'm at a restaurant with my children, I ask them both to go to keep each other
yeah, that's
safe.
fine. Yeah,
That doesn't mean that when I have one of the kids who likes to go bike riding by himself. When he says to go, Dad, I want to go, yeah, just go bike riding, whatever, go do your thing, right? And the other one says, hey, I want to go to the store with my three other friends. Yeah, fine, right? So I'm not saying that they have to be together. So like I'm just saying whenever possible, I try to keep them safe,
but
right?
that's an age-old thing, right? That's an
Huh?
age-old thing. Your brother's keeper. That's an age-old thing. Like, do you believe in that? As far as like, that's a question to you. How because there's two boys and they're brothers. Do you believe in like one is kind of somewhat responsible for the other when they're out,
No,
like the older one, or you don't put that pressure on them?
no. They're individuals. I just happen to have a second one, so I send them, whichever
Yeah, yeah.
one it is at the time. But
No,
no,
but I'm
I
just
don't.
aside from everything, just like just typically like do you, because I remember a friend telling me this, and this is an interesting story. He had a brother, and one time the mother told him to go do something and run an errand or something, and then they came back, and then the younger brother got in trouble for going, but he had no choice because he was told he has to be with the older brother. And I just always thought that was a strange thing because he was kind of like penalized for something that was out of his control. So I know some parents kind of have this kind of, maybe that's an old fashioned, some people have that kind of, oh, well, you got to take care of your brother, you're the oldest. And I always thought that was a strange pressure to put on a, just because somebody's older by like a month or two or a year or two, why would they have this pressure of just having to know better, you know?
No. I don't manage the boys like that. I have told them. I've straight up told each one of them, you don't have to like this guy, but it would be awesome if you did. I mean, you guys have been around each other, and I know that there's differences, and try to figure out how to be, how to be friends. You don't have to be best friends just because you're brothers. Um, but you could try to make it work. So I don't put that kind of pressure on them. No, I find it completely unnecessary. And I why? Because of perspective, which you've mentioned before about parenting, right? You use quite a bit of perspective based parenting, meaning your perspective is, because I didn't have a father, I have this opportunity of being an even better father. So I do that. I also think about that with my sisters, right? I think my sisters and I have differences that, from my point of view, just because we come from the same mother doesn't mean that I have to do it. Like I have to be any one particular way towards them. I'm like, no, you know what? I'm going to treat my sisters the way that I would treat anybody. You, right? I'm going to hang out with you because you like me. I'm going to hang out with you because I like you. I'm not going to hang out with my sister just
Mhm.
because she's my sister. And yes, she's driving me nuts while I'm there. And I'm not saying that she does, but I'm saying I don't feel that sort of responsibility. So of course I'm not going to take that idea and then now apply it to my children. Mm-hmm.
Do you did you have freedoms growing up, you feel?
I had all of them. Nobody ever told me what to do when I was a child. I was literally on my own. For as long as I can remember, I did whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted. I had a key to the house. As far as I can remember, since I was 6 years old, I had a key to the house. 6 years. That's
Like a
unbelievable that nothing.
latchkey kid.
Latchkey? What does that
You ever
mean?
heard of this term? It's called latchkey kid. You never heard of that?
I have heard of him. What does it mean?
It means it's a kid that can come home from school on their own and just put the latch on and be on their own. Like that's the term. It's
Is
like
that right?
you come home
Yeah.
from school on your own, and you
Oh,
and,
yes.
and yeah. So that's where that comes from. That term. So
Yeah. No. Oh, I
I
had
was
a
a
key.
latchkey kid too.
Oh, you too?
Yeah, I had my own key. Yeah, I could come
Yeah.
in from
Yeah.
school, wait there till my mom comes, and that's it.
Do you remember at what age you got the key?
Oh man, pretty young, man. I have see that, and that's why I kind of have some of the, the conflicts I have with parenting because I like you, like I have, like I do believe like I don't want to go backwards in society, like I think it's all about going forward, but like I had a key from very young, man. Like I want to say like I could come home from school easily from like 7, 8, maybe 8. I go to school. Like your parents would give you these vague instructions not to hopefully kill yourself or get killed. You know what I'm saying? Like they'd be like, look across the street when you're going home. Don't talk to strangers and don't play with fire. And pretty much that was all the babysitting they felt you needed.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And maybe going back to my mom's generation, it's probably even they could even had more freedoms,
More
and,
freedom.
and I think with each generations, some of those freedoms have been kind of taken away. But yeah, I had it from a young age, man. Yeah, and I would go and I would sometimes lose my key, and I'd go to the neighbors and they would have a
Yeah.
copy of the key and let me in. But those are the
Yeah.
things that helped me to navigate even to this age. I think
Yeah.
they're very important lessons. Very.
I don't think about that. My absolute freedoms. The thing about it. The thing you see that. Okay. All right. This is interesting because I don't think that the reason I was so free wasn't planned. I don't think that my parents were like, oh, we have a great idea. Let's go ahead and let this guy do whatever he wants. I think that they were busy in their own lives doing whatever, and they just didn't think about it much. Here's a key, because I kept going in and out and knocking on the door, let me in and out. So finally, okay, here's the key. Leave us alone. Here's the key. I don't remember. I mean, they might have. I think my mother might have given me some instructions, like you were saying. Try not to burn something or kill yourself. I don't remember any of that. She might have said it, but I don't remember any instructions whatsoever. I was chaos. The neighborhood. I was not the popular kid in the neighborhood because nobody told me. I was never reprimanded for breaking windows and breaking things and destroying the neighborhood.
You never got in trouble with anybody, like in the neighborhood. You never got like, you know, like I remember several times back in the days getting in trouble with, that generation. It's almost like the people were able to reprimand you, and you had a conflict. For me, it was different. It was like, okay, I remember I got in trouble with the woman or somebody, like maybe this guy might try to, like say you get in trouble with a guy and he gives you a scolding, or he may even say if he just ring your ear, which is probably going back way back in the day. But then here's the conflict you had. Are you going to tell your mom that this guy did, nothing bad, but he shouted at you? All right, why did he shout at you? Because I broke his window. So it's like almost like you'd either deal with it then or deal with it later,
I don't remember ever. I think of as I think back on my experience as a child, I would I the image that comes to mind is remember the Tasmanian Devil in
Oh yeah,
the cartoon,
Looney Tunes, yeah.
and that and then like that was me. That's like I didn't hear anybody, I didn't see anybody. It was just whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted. It was just like I was going, man. I think as soon as I could in my life as a child, you know, put the pedal to the metal, and go just like 100%. I haven't let go of that gas pedal my entire life, and it's just like, and it's just been like, and everything just goes by so fast. I just don't have even enough time to like.
Just go, yeah.
Yeah, no.
And maybe your parents sound like they were parents, and that's the thing about, just not to think you lose track, but the thing about parenting is, as much as you want to be an individual, and you may say, hey, this is how I'm going to raise my boys, right? I'm going to do it this way. And I might be like, this is how I'm going to raise my daughter. We're all people of the time, I'm a man of this time. So, like, it's going to be very hard for me to be like, well, I believe my child, I don't want my daughter to have a cell phone. She's going to go to a school where everybody's got a cell phone. And do you know how hard that's going to be and how much of a separation you cause? You know what I mean? So it's weird is that parent, and one thing I would say about parent, we're all kind of in it together to some degree with what we decide is, because right now, do your children, they have cell phones?
For years now, yeah.
For years. So maybe when cell phones first came out, if you didn't have, it would be okay. Like, so I have a son that's 26 now. When he was 12, he didn't have a cell phone.
Right.
Cell phones were around, but it wasn't generally acceptable for kids to have a cell phone. Like, it's just, they're kids. They don't need cell phones.
Yeah.
So we are people of the times, and I guess my point is like, the things we do, we kind of set the tone together, for parenting in a lot of ways, probably more than we even think about.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that is true. That is a good point. How much we parent based on how other people are parenting. Like the cell phone is a perfect example, right? It would be. I mean, I cannot imagine. Not my boy's not having a cell phone right now and not being
able
like
to child abuse. People look at you like you're abusing your child if you didn't give them a cell phone.
Somebody will call diapers on you. Take your kids.
It's almost getting to that point. Like, oh, how can you? Oh, you don't know what your child's doing in school. What if there's a school shooting?
Yeah, I'm sure that. Yeah, I'm sure there's that kind of pressure. But the reason that I accepted it, the reason that so before cell phones, they had tablets, and the reason I agreed to tablets was because, again, when did change? Because hold on a sec, 2015. It's only 5 years. No, The reason I went with the tablets was because I knew that the future was hyper digital, whatever that means. I knew that the future was digital all the way, like just everything was going to be digital in the future. So I thought, well, let's say for argument's sake that my boys, so they had, let's say they got their first tablet 6 years ago, so maybe they were 7 years old, right? I thought, for me, this is important that they know what the future looks like, right? And that they immerse themselves into what the future is, will be, right? It's like hyper digital. It's like I wanted them to, right or wrong, I wanted them to integrate into the digital aspect of life as soon as possible because I thought that long term that would be beneficial. Today we know that, for instance, applications such as Facebook and others, have utilized their understanding of human behavior to basically make people addicted to their applications. Okay, now we know that. We didn't know it then when it first came out. We didn't know why we liked it so much, and later
Well, it wasn't the same as well. It wasn't the same as when it came out. It kind of did change, you know.
it became, yeah, that's another thing, right? But so then what I've done with that, what I've done with that information is I've said to them, look, I want you to know that the reason why you can't live without your phone is because you're addicted, and it's been made addictive by the creator. So I mean, those are the sort of adjustments that I make, right? The course corrections that I can make as I try to stay a step ahead of some, of I don't know. I mean, that's not even that sounds silly, but as I try to stay current, right, and aware, you know. Um, but technology is, who knows where it's going to go. I mean, but it is absolute insanity, right? We don't know where all of this stuff is going, and people are so drawn to it. It's just so appealing to children and even to adults. I mean, it's so hard to say children when it's like adults are. There are grown men out there that are gaming a lot to the point that maybe they're ruining their relationships, their marriages, or not spending enough time with their kids because they gotta be gaming.
Yeah, and look, with each generation, like you said, and it's an interesting point. You said like each generation is different, right? And just to keep it with parenting, right? When I was younger, it was like, even go younger in the 50s, it was probably TV, right? TV
Yeah,
was the internet at the time. Oh, you're gonna kill you. You're gonna go blind. You're gonna like ruin your life. You're gonna be a couch potato. That was a famous phrase, right? I don't even think gaming has. I think gaming is a lot more is less intrusive to the way we live our lives than social media and phones are. You know what I mean? Because games are like, kids can play games, and even when I was probably the first generation, I come from the first. The term gamer that came from my generation. Like, well, gamer probably from our son, but I mean, we were the first gamers, right?
yeah,
Like, because it's just more acceptable because that's the term gamer. But like when I was younger, the first microcomputers, first games, Pac-Man, that's where we were, right? And games, yeah, gaming is more of I think even more of an interactive kind of, yeah. There's puzzle solving in games. There's so many things with games that I think are positive. And I think games right now, to be honest with you, video games, like we're talking PlayStation, Xboxes, whatever you play, Fortnite, those are like literally the least of our worries. Because for our kids, and this is the important thing, regardless of reading that book or whatever, from my own experiences, you play a game, you choose who you want to be. It's not like social media where it can make you tap into your anxiety,
yeah,
your depression, make you say, how come these people over here look like they're having a good time and I'm not having. It's not.
yeah,
Video game to me is an escapism from that. It's a positive thing to me, like to some degree. Obviously, like anything can be taken too far. But I think video games, they have I'm sure even video games companies would like to make them as addictive as phones,
yeah,
you know what I mean? As
yeah.
social media. But it's the nature of it. So yeah, I'm curious to see how it goes in the future. I do think there's some positive things, but I do think, and I think we're going to learn as human beings with everything that this is a great thing. This is a great tool, but at the same time,
Yeah.
we can't. We have to put together, and that's what just to bring it back to parenting and stuff like that. I just think we're living in a different time and an interesting time, at a time of a huge amount of change with a lot of things are changing in the world as well. How do you find about the change in the world as parent? How do you cope with that, like the change in world? Because I feel like we're seeing it. When I say changing, like, you know, they say the world is spinning, right? We know that the world spins, right? 365, we know it's spinning. You can't feel it, right? You can't look outside and see it spinning. The world's changing. I feel like we could see it. It's moving at such a pace that you can see it. Do you find that it's gonna how do you deal with that as far as the changing world quick, as fast as it
It's
is?
the the speed in which it's changing doesn't it doesn't create. No, I don't think about it. There isn't any
No?
anxiety that is no, currently with COVID. um I try to I try to leave my YouTube lane, the one that, because I try to leave the algorithm lane if at all possible. As we all know now that YouTube will feed you the videos that you're most interested in. But I try and I do my best every once in a while to try to identify other avenues, other types of videos, other information, so that I stay on top of what may be happening for our safety. Um, but currently, it's a little. I think currently. I have to tell you, I am concerned. I am concerned. I'm concerned about the numbers. I'm concerned about the number of people that are sick. I'm concerned about the entire planet having come to a screeching halt, and an economy. And I don't know what that means. Um, with when is the change in the economy, as we've seen it over the last 3-4 months? When is that going to catch up and then turn into something that where we need to make adjustments? Like you and I need to, like, say, um, uh, I worry
But as a
about.
parent, does it change your, like, do you talk to that with your sons as a
Yeah,
parent? That's an
yes.
interesting thing.
Yeah, so basically I take all this information and then I have sit downs, like, maybe during dinner, I'm like, all right, guys, we're going to talk about this. And of course, they roll their eyes and yawn because I'm talking. But yeah, but even my guys, and maybe because I already do a lot, because I do a lot of that. I grab information and then I download it onto them, right? I acquire it and then I download them. I download it onto them during maybe our car ride, like as soon as everybody's in the car and they're trapped in my environment, it's my chance to share information, right? And
Well,
yeah,
that's always a tough one because being able to talk to kids, one thing I have learned over time is, like, there's times when your kid's gonna absorb that energy, that what you're saying, and there's times when it's just gonna be like, wah, 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 wah. You know what I'm saying? And what I've found is you just have to find them. There's these little moments where your children are gonna be more receptive, and you've got to. It's almost like kids nowadays. It's like, no matter. I do a cool job. I'm a cool dad. I don't care. Like I work with, like, current musicians. Like, I'm pretty young for the age I have kids, and I'm still. They don't really, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm still a dad. You know what I'm saying? It's still like, what do you know?
what do you
You
know?
know,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? You know?
I know this because I know this because when I was 13, there was no way that I could have cared. I could not. I didn't care, and I don't think so. My expectation isn't that my children will listen. My expectation is of me. Am I with consistency delivering the messages that I think are most important and that they need? If they don't hear it, it's because of their age. But I'm delivering, right? That's where the parenting comes in for me. Like, I'm talking about COVID. I'm talking about finances. I'm talking about money. I'm talking, like, I'm like, I have a laundry list of items that I'm delivering. Every day, every week, every day, every week. I'm doing it. I'm doing it. I'm doing it. Right? It's very concerted effort, concerted cultivation. I absolutely do that. I absolutely make sure that, every week I'm thinking, what have I not thought of? Is it possible for me to know what I don't know? and I know it's not. But that's why, again, whenever possible, I try to like exit my normal lane, right? Exit my
mm,
normal feed, so that I can catch glimpses of other things that may be
mm,
happening, so that I can say to them, hey, I'm aware of this, I know about this, I want to share it with you. Um,
mm,
I think part of the reason why I do that is because I want them to I want them to know that that's how I am and that's how I function, and I want them to also take that model and apply it to the rest of their lives, right? That they're gonna remember, oh, dad was always looking for information to share with us, so then when they have a girlfriend, they're gonna do the same thing in their relationship, and then eventually when they have children, they're gonna do the same thing with in their families, because it makes sense,
mm.
and not in a painful manner. I mean, I don't go on and on and on and forever. Yeah, I probably go on way too much anyway because because they're 12 and 13. So like
Mm,
these should be like bursts of 30 seconds, and I go on for 5 to 10 minutes. But
mm.
I have to do it.
Yeah, no, it's important. I mean, it's important. You want to fill them with the right nutrition, but at the same time, look, for instance, my mom. To tell you an interesting story. I never like when I was younger. Like I never really followed people. I never followed the crowd. I was always very like an individual as far as like my what I was into, what I liked. I never really was a kid that like, oh, everybody likes this. I like that now. Like I either liked it or I didn't. It didn't matter what it was. So growing up, I remember I had a bunch of friends around my house, and we were, playing video games, and some of them were smoking and like just smoked like cigarettes at the time. We were real, not, yeah, I don't know, maybe it was late teens or mid teens or whatever, 15. And then I remember trying to get them out of the house, and I had sprayed, trying to kill the scent of the spray and smoke and everything. And then my mom came home and she said to me, she looked around, she said, "Don't let your friends smoke in the house." And that's it. She never said to me, "Did you smoke? Are you smoking? Why are you smoking? What?" I never smoked. Never was my thing. Never never cared for it. And I think I always had this kind of feeling like I didn't want to disappoint my mom, and I
Yeah.
also felt how she raised me from example. It's funny. And it, I think I have a unique perspective because even though you may be speaking to other people about dads and being a dad, some of my greatest lessons were from my mom. Like it's funny, I actually did a video when I went to London last, and I sat my mom down, and I just got a camera out, and I just talked to her for like an hour, 2 hours, just asked her everything I ever wanted to know, and I think it's just it's just the example of it, Like I think I saw when she was scared, I only remember my mom crying once, and I only remember certain things, but like I think she led by an example in some ways. And she was tough on me in some ways, but not super tough. She wasn't super strict. She wasn't but maybe I was a kid that didn't need that because there's two things. There's the way you raise your kid, and there's also the kid you have. And you've got to find a balance because sometimes it doesn't matter. You could be the strictest parent in the world to a really rebellious kid. Like you just said, growing up, you were just doing your own thing,
Yeah.
going around like so maybe your approach, and I think with parenthood, and I think a lot of people sometimes need to look at it as well. And I'd advise anybody is just kind of look at the kid you have and think what kind of parent do they need? You
Right.
know what I'm saying?
Right. Be curious.
Yeah, because sometimes I'm gonna be this parent, and sometimes we all do. We have this kind of predisposed things of what we think we've. It's weird because it's like we all go through this memory block, right? Like we go through this thing that we forget that we were kids. And now
Right.
kids look at us like you've never been a kid. Your son looks at you like you've never been a kid. He
Yeah.
doesn't see a kid. He
No.
doesn't see somebody who has been a kid. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Like
So
he's an
like,
old man.
yeah, like he just like you. Yeah, you just woke up like the way you are, and
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
you haven't done none of the things that he's about to do. Like you'd be like,
Yeah.
don't go down that road because I've been down there. And they'd be like, what do you know? I'm like, no, So it's an interesting thing, and you just have to. I try not to. I try to remember that I was a kid, and and I try to talk to them in a way that. Because do you remember this Will Smith song? I don't know if you ever was into rap growing up. And like I
Not
remember
really.
I talked to my daughter and we went somewhere and sometimes we've had, she said like, parents don't understand, like, something about, oh, you don't, or mom doesn't understand me or dad doesn't understand me. But there's a famous Will Smith song and it's called Parents Just Don't Understand.
Yeah, yeah, I remember that one, of course.
When Will Smith wrote that, he probably was a kid and his parents didn't understand. Now Will Smith's a kid, dad. You know what I mean?
But
So that's the
Paris,
irony in it.
I want to go. I want to go back to what you said about your mom. What I'm saying, Paris, is your dad wasn't around, so you can't compare. So,
Yeah.
meaning, what your experience is the experience of millions of us who only grew up with mom. And thank God that we had amazing mothers, amazing mother. My mother is an amazing woman to this day. She's in her 70s. Incredible, incredible. How she did it is beyond me. Four children. I mean, like the story. I don't want to bore you with it,
Mm-hmm.
but
No, no.
all of my good stories are because thank God for my mom. But my point being, all of the research today shows, Paris, that you would have benefited from a dad like you in your
No,
life.
100%.
That's all I'm saying. So I mean, why do I talk to men about fatherhood? Because all the research shows that we benefit from fathers. Today, a coworker emailed me an article, about Cambridge that came out and said, the importance about boys and girls playing rough with dad on the carpet, and how research shows, or at least early research shows, that it helps children, and how their minds function,
Mm-hmm.
and how they balance their thoughts and everything else, right? So, thank God that women don't abandon their children as in the percentages and at the rate in which men do. I mean, if that was the case, I don't think humanity would be around. If women could separate themselves, distance themselves from their children the way that men do, then we wouldn't have 7.5 billion people. We may be at a billion, in fact, in 2020, if women could. So women don't. And what's truly remarkable. So I mean, again, it's not. This is not a conversation about mothers against fathers, or what are the differences. The fact of the matter is that you and I come from a man and from a woman. That's just currently how it's being done, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're not being 3D printed. Yeah. So for the time being, we need a man and a woman, and for we look back for the entire history of humanity up until recently, it was the woman's job, right? And we know why. Women were not a part of much of civilization, meaning, or let's say, how do I know that might come across wrong.
Or
Women,
the
until
workforce.
so they didn't go to work, right?
Yeah.
So women didn't go to work. They didn't leave the house um, to go to work. So that meant that the man was the one who left. She stayed at home. She raised the kids. He came back. Maybe he participated. Maybe he didn't. But at the same time, at that time, we didn't have the kind of research that showed that when he comes back, you should, after you've worked your 14-hour day, I don't know,
Mm.
or whatever. Now, when you come back, you should want to spend time with the children. We At the time, people didn't know about it, and I got to tell you, today in 2020, a lot of people still don't know that fathers are important. I see it over and over again, right? Over like all this, like this. These are not conversations that are being had um, in mainstream media. It's not that. I mean, there are
Well,
more fathers today because mothers are saying, wait a minute, I'm earning half the money to pay for everything. You should
mm.
take care of the kids, right? And that whole idea, like so. Um,
Well,
yeah,
no, that's an interesting point. I mean, I do think, look, growing up without a father, I do think there's parts of me that are missing. Like
of
I
course.
can, I don't need any research. Like, I mean, not saying that research is not valid, but I live a lot of life. Like, I'm not saying I feel like I've lived a lot of life. I've traveled a lot of places. I have, I have in-depth communication. I mean, conversations with lots of people. I do believe, yeah, I think a child benefiting from two parents, and not only two parents, two present parents. They have to be present to some degree as well. I know a lot of people that grew up with dads that their dads would just go to work, come home, not talk to them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they're absent. They're emotionally absent. No,
Yeah, they're met.
of course, no.
That. So,
You want
and I
the
think,
dad like you, engaged.
yeah, and I do think that we're one thing that we've improved on to some degree, and there's always a trade-off. I think the newer generation of fathers are, I would say, from my experience, at least, in West Indian community, and I think are more involved than they have been previous, because I think people's perception before was like, oh, that's the woman's job,
Right.
and now women are in the workforce, and but I do think now we face another issue: is how do we balance it, right? How do we balance both parents working and being engaged?
I don't know that that's an issue. First, I don't know what percentage of the population is actually even having an issue. Like, I think that
You don't
I
think it's
don't
an issue?
I don't think trying to find out what the balance is an issue. I think that considering how many millions of children are growing up without fathers right now, that's the issue. I think that once there are 100,000 children growing up without fathers in the world, then we might be like, okay, so what's the balance? Then we should worry about it. Currently, I
Hmm.
think that what we have
Well,
to
no, it's
agree
about.
on.
I mean, I disagree. I do think it's an issue, but maybe it's not the prominent one that we're to talk about. And I understand that. But yeah, the thing about fathers, I mean, look, there might be lots of situations where there might not be a father. For whatever reasons, people lose their fathers. There's always that. So what do you do in a like? What do you think what do you think the goal of society should be with fathers and fatherhood, or families? Because I think no matter what, right? No matter if the father's there or relationships don't work out, because we're talking about a loving family and everybody under the same house. But sometimes there's families that doesn't mean that the mother and father's together. But I think there's still an importance of a father's presence.
The problem, okay, I tell you what the problem is right now. That there is too much. I believe that there are too many people who are still okay with allowing a man, a young man or whatever age, to get a girl pregnant and it not and the child not be his responsibility, but clearly the child is the woman's responsibility. I think that if there is a problem, it is that. I think we see it. We see it all the time. I see it all the time. I hear it all the time on my YouTube channel. I hear guys all the time like, I got the girl pregnant. What am I going to do? I want to leave. I'm leaving the country. I'm leaving. Or my mother told me I should leave. I shouldn't be there. I need to go. Like, I should continue with my life and let her deal with this. The problem is that collectively we need to tell all men
Mm.
going forward that that child is his responsibility. I have young men write me all the time saying, I got her pregnant. What do I do? What do you do? You're a dad. You don't do anything. You stay. You do the best you can. You're a dad to that child. You are everything that that child needs of you. You become whatever you need to become to be there for that child that absolutely desperately needs you, without a doubt. Parris, you and I made the best of not having that. But you know what? I try every single day to be an amazing dad to these guys because I brought them into the world. I'm responsible for them. See, that's the difference.
All right,
That's
so
the difference here.
that's a good point. So thing. So what happens when a child? What does the law say to a guy that abandons his child? What do they say to that?
So you bring an interesting point. Do we need the law to say it? Maybe early on we need the law to bring it.
Because
But
the
I
law
mean,
can the law says financially you have an obligation,
well,
right?
I mean,
No, but
I don't know that it
right,
works. I don't
right.
know. I
No,
don't know
no, I'm
that it
not saying
works.
it works. I'm not saying it. No, I'm not saying it works. Here's the point that I'm getting at. The law says that there's a financial obligation, but there's no law that makes a dad go with his child, right? So that's what
It's
we're saying. Maybe they might need to be something like, I don't know. I don't know what the
we
thing
need
is on that.
a collective agreement. Yeah,
That you
collective.
that because they can't make you engage with
No, no, they
there's
can't
no
make
law
you
that can make
engage.
you engage.
No,
So here's the
it,
thing. I agree with your point. Like you you preach to the choir. But here's the issue, and this is what it comes back to with a lot of things. the issue doesn't begin when the guy has the child and leaves. It becomes the issue to me sometimes. The mentality of that guy is like, how do we make that person stand for that thing? You know what I'm saying? How do we make that person like? How do we? That has to come from the person. Like the reason I never left, or the reason that like I fought to have a child. I have a child that's overseas with a mother that said, "I don't want you to be the father for any other reason than how she felt about it." And that took, listen, that took 17 years of fight. Now, a lot of guys would have been like, oh, she doesn't want me to be the father? She doesn't want me to have interactions from him, with my kid? That means I'm free. I didn't see that. I thought that I have to fight to have that, you know? So that's in a person. And now we have to think to ourselves, why do some of these guys feel like, and that's, I don't want to say all guys because it's a tough situation because there's a lot of guys that want to fight and they can't be, and for whatever reason, and the law doesn't. There's so many different things with that, and that law kind of goes both ways, right? But I do think that there has to be an example set, and there has to, and maybe you're right. There has to be more of an initiative for people to feel like it's unacceptable.
Right. That's it. That's
To
it. That's
leave your
it.
child.
The
You know what I'm saying?
community needs to make it known that it is unacceptable for you to abandon your child, meaning that more men knowing this would take precautions to not have children because they know they don't want to be there. They know they don't want to be dads at 16.
Yeah.
So the community knows. If you know this innately, right? If all children around here, all 16-year-old boys around here knew that the community would say the moment that you have that child, you will have to take care of him, he would be more careful, and he'd be out there in Costco buying condoms, right, by the thousands.
But that's
Because
not, see, Ricardo, I have to here's the thing though, and you could look at research for this, and we know what the research on this is going to show us, right? Because where does this happen the most? Where in what like where teenage pregnancy? Where does this happen the most? Does it happen the most in Bergen County, or does it happen the most in the Bronx?
what's the point? I don't understand the
The
connection.
point of I'm saying it comes down to it's a level of education, and it's on a
Yeah,
level of
right.
and it's a
We're not disagreeing.
yeah, and it's a level, but some of impoverished areas where
Yeah.
this happened. My wife she grew up in Brooklyn. She had a child at 16. Now my wife is a registered nurse. We've made it. We live in Bergen County. You know what I'm saying? That's not like where she came from, where I came from. We're not meant to be here.
We're not
You know
saying
what I'm
you're
saying?
not saying anything different.
No, but what I'm saying. So what needs to happen? That means that I think education needs to be in areas where there is the most problems. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying that there's not a 16-year-old kid that lives in Paramus somewhere that may get thingy, guy. But I'm saying that what needs to happen is there needs to be education, and we need to elevate.
Yeah, but there's
Elevate.
education everywhere. That what I'm not saying there should not be education in the wealthiest towns. No, I'm
But I'm
saying
not
there
talking
should be
about
education
education.
across.
I'm not talking about a pamphlet saying don't get.
Well, no,
I'm just
we're
talking
not.
about like
We're not.
I'm just talking about.
We're I'm sorry. We're not, you and I are not creating a pamphlet. What you and I are creating is a conversation whereby we're saying fathers are important. If you're listening to this, if you're listening or watching this video, note it's your responsibility. If you get a girl pregnant, you have to be there for the child. That's what I'm saying, and I think that that's what you're saying. It doesn't matter whether
It
you
is
are
what I'm saying,
poor
but
or not.
it does matter to me, people, because I feel like there are places that have this. This is more prevalent, and it speaks to me. I'm a black man. Like I know in my culture, in my where I come from, this is more of an issue. It is. It's just more. Like I know more people that have been teenage parents. Like not random people. I know these people. I've seen these people. I'm the father of a teenage pregnancy. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? Like, so I know it firsthand. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know it. And I know the mentality that my wife had when she had a child. And I know the mentality of the father who left. You know what I'm saying? So I do think that, like, that some things need to be done to uplift everybody to feel like, and it starts with, like, it's like, for instance, like, what was the background? What led to that? Obviously, we know teenagers are going to do things and stuff, but there's definitely I definitely think there are some issues, and we have to think about. And it's not as simple as like, hey, make the father stay, in the first place.
And
What if
no
the
one is
father?
saying that well, there's nothing simple about that. Nobody can make a father stay. I'm
Mm,
not saying that. And I'm saying, well, you and I are saying the same thing. We're not forcing anybody to do anything. All, what we're doing is, what we're trying to do is to get the community to recognize that men are important and they should be there if they have a child, whether it happens in the ghetto or whether it happens in the castles, whatever it is.
mm.
It doesn't matter where you are. So if you're saying that if you're saying, well, Ricardo, the ghetto needs more education, fine. But more of what we're
More
saying, which is
services.
stay, whatever. Yeah, but I mean that's fine. But that's not what I'm doing here with you. What I'm doing here with you is agreeing that fathers are important.
Yeah. So no, I definitely no, definitely agree that fathers are important. We know fathers are important, and we
Well,
know fathers.
I hope, I hope you agree because for your daughter's sake, I hope that you agree that you're important. I am certain that your daughter loves having you around.
100%. I mean, you know, I have a daughter from a failed relationship, and I still have, even as present as I've been as a father and fought relentlessly, I still have a guilt that I can't be with her every day. You know what I'm saying? And I try to make the best of a situation. And I do know that I've made an impact in her life. And even when I was told I'm not important. Do you understand? Like I was told from the mother, you're not important. We just need your money, but you're not important. And I had to be like, no, like I am important. As important as my money. You know what I mean? And I think that's the thing. And that is somewhat of a cycle. And I wouldn't say. I mean, look, I don't want to say it's a negative situation, but like I say, I've kind of seen it firsthand. You know what I mean? Like I've raised a child from my wife had my child, her son when she was 16, and that's the teenage pregnancy. You know what I'm saying? Like, and then I had a daughter when I was 25, and like, so there was so many things, but I do think it's important, but I think it's an education and it's a mindset
Yeah,
in
it's a
these
mind.
men.
Yeah, it's a
No,
mindset.
don't get me wrong. I mean, even Steve Jobs had a daughter. His first daughter. He wasn't present in her life. He didn't want to be present in her life, and it took him to get to a certain thing. So I guess we know that it can happen everywhere. You could be the richest person or the poorest person. But
What's it?
was that?
Something you make me think about when your first daughter's mother was telling you that you were not important. Something important here to note is that because of the type of person that you are, you knew that you were important. You knew, like there was no doubt. In an environment where collectively we're unaware of the importance of the father, a man not like you that maybe is not as self-aware might say, "Oh, okay, shit, all right, I'm out. That's fine. They don't want me. I'm not." And collectively, he doesn't know, right? It's not common knowledge, right?
Mm,
He might just walk away. But what I'm saying is, you know, if that man, if that you that wasn't as self-aware,
mm,
um, lived in an environment where everybody was clear that he does need to be there, then
mm.
even after having a little bit of doubt about what this woman is saying, he'd be like, "No, what are you talking about? You're crazy. Everybody knows that I have to be here. You may not want me here, but I'm gonna have to be here. So we're gonna have to figure out how to do it.
What's
So I'm
that
not going.
saying, right? It takes a village, right? Know this saying.
I don't know. My thing about that saying is
But
that
but but what I say that though, what I do like about, look, everything, whether you quotes you might like or not like, they have a little bit of something in there, right? So what I do like about that quote, "It takes a village," means like it takes also what was the mother's mindset that would say that to a man. You know what I'm saying? Maybe
yeah,
she didn't have a father, so she didn't have a father. So could you remember that? So it's not just me being a father to a child. There's also a mother that didn't have a father, right? So in her head, oh, I didn't have a father, so why do I need a father to raise another child?
hmm
You get what I'm saying?
yeah,
So
yeah,
that's
sure.
why. So that's what I'm saying. So that's what I'm saying. So, but maybe if in that village, if she had a father or elder or another person, this is a cycle. You have to understand. She may not have a father. Her mom might have had kids without, and none of the fathers
Yeah,
have worked
yeah,
out, right?
Yeah.
And the fathers may have not been around because they didn't have fathers. This is a cycle. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that me being in my daughter's life, that one day when she gets in a situation, and God forbid, who knows what might work out. Not the most people that get together don't stay together for 20 years. I'm a no anomaly. I've been married for 20 years, right? She has to know that, well, if she gets in a situation, because she will be left with the child if she does have a situation, right? More than likely, the
And
mother's always,
that's what we're trying to
yeah,
avoid with this conversation.
yeah.
That
So
she's
so
gonna, yeah.
so I'm hoping that I'm avoiding it, not only by me being a father, but by me being a father in her life, so that whenever she goes further and that the next guy who she gets up with, hopefully there was a father in his life, and that cycle is in a better trajectory.
Well, what I think could happen because of your example is that clearly she's not going to be the one to abandon the child, right? But what I believe that will happen is that the man that she meets, maybe the young man, right? Maybe when she's 16, 18, that she's thinking, if I get pregnant, I don't want to be with this guy because, or I don't want to allow this guy to get me pregnant because I know the kind of man that he is, the kind of young man that he is. I think that that's what you're teaching your daughter, right? You're teaching you. So I'm teaching my, hold on. So I'm teaching my children. If you get a girl pregnant, that's gonna be the woman that you're gonna be with for a long, long time because you gotta take care of that child. What you're teaching your daughter is to watch out for men who may not be, good partners long term, right? Who may not stay. So you're teaching her to be more cautious. Don't you think? Isn't that where we're
I mean,
going?
I'm teaching her a lot of things. I'm hoping to what to look for in a man.
Yes,
I'm
exactly.
hoping her, I'm hoping that even that, God forbid, she might meet the most amazing person in the world, most amazing man, and something may happen to that man, and then she has to maybe navigate this world and find another partner that can be a man, like I was to my, like, you know what I'm saying? So my wife, here's the thing, my son never had a paternal dad that was like, biological dad that stood there, right? But it didn't stop him from having a father. He has a father, even though his dad wasn't there. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I think it's important I think what my message and what I do, I would love to elevate. I would like to elevate men, period.
Yeah,
I would
yeah.
like to elevate men, period. Like to be better men. So
How?
that
So how? Yeah, like how?
it's a
What
lot
do
of
you?
things. So it's just not so the reason, all right, so an interesting thing. So for it, let me just plug my adapter in here. Um Look, so hopefully men don't just run out when they get a girl pregnant, or
Right.
because they're scared, or
Because that's
because
where
they
it
don't have
starts.
any money, or
When you
because they what's that?
when you say there's a lot of things, there aren't a lot of things, Paris. There's only one thing. There's first and foremost things. This because when you are born out of the womb, when you come out, that is it. Like you say, there's a lot of things I want to elevate them in. No, no, no. There's just that. Like like you have to think about it. It's there isn't a child without a father. There isn't a father without a child. There's not two separate things. This is one
Well,
thing.
well, here's the thing. So, no, but here's the thing. I know lots of fathers, right? I know lots of fathers. I know fathers. I know fathers, great fathers. I know absentee fathers. I know drug addict fathers. I know fathers that are in psychological places that can't see their kids because they're not mentally there. I know tons of fathers. What father, like, so it's not just about being a father that stays there. Like, what good is a father that stays there, that's drunk, that's like, that just like gets in crazy arguments, doesn't know how to communicate? What good is
Okay,
that?
so what are you saying? I don't know.
Elevate a man. That's what I'm saying.
How?
You need
Okay, so what is it?
by a lot of things. This all comes full circle. One thing about me, I'm a thinking man. I don't like. I've always been a thinking man. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a lot of things that elevates a man.
All
I
right.
think teaching is one of them, which we talked
Okay.
about. The
So
cycle.
a father should be a teacher. Got it.
To
What
be
else?
a teacher. I also think that, like, how you raise your kids. So that's why I talked about like freedoms and like being
Give
able
them
to let the
freedom,
child turn for responsibilities.
independence.
Responsibility. This is what I'm saying. Like, so if I have a child, right? I have a son or a girl, and I'm like, don't like you play video games, whatever. Like, don't worry. Like, I don't put him out there to kind of like learn any type of responsibility. He doesn't have to clean up his room, doesn't do anything. Now, I'm not saying that these things guarantee you're going to raise a great man, but I think you have a better chance when there's some sort of boundaries. There's some sort of like teachings. You
Yeah,
know what
it's
I'm
a,
saying?
you're talking about a rule book. That's cool. Let's list it, man. Let's list it. Hold on. I'll get you started and then you jump in, right? So it's be emotionally present, physically present, teach values, right?
Mm,
Teach freedoms, teach
mm,
independence, be curious with your child, right? These are all the things that you're saying, right?
yeah.
Like don't physically or emotionally beat on the mother, right? Respect the mother, right? So
Mm,
that that child, learn how to behave
mm,
within the
yeah.
relationship, right? The dad that respects himself. You're saying a dad that's not an alcoholic, a dad that is not a drug addict, right? So this is continue. Go ahead. I'm with you. I'm with you. These are
Yeah,
all
yeah.
things that I want too. Go ahead.
No, so that's it. I mean, I just have a strong feeling about that. Like about like there's just to me there's something about being a strong man. I feel to some degree I'm like I've been through hard times and I'm not saying I handled everything right, but I do think like to some degree I think my kids view me and see me as a that I have a certain amount of strength. You know what I mean? And I think some of these kids that are young, it's just about giving them that being able to have that strength to stay there and work it out. Like the moms have to have that strength, right? They
Yeah.
have to have that. They have no choice. They can't
Yeah.
go. For the most part, it's very without and looking at any facts or statistics. We know for the most part, women
Oh,
stay
yeah.
with it. It's way in
The vast
proportionately that they
the
stay with
vast
the
majority.
child.
Yeah.
The vast majority, right? But with guys, we have that option, and I think that that's the thing. It's gonna be hard to make a law to engage a guy with child. They can
It's
do
not a
it
law.
with
It's not a law. No, we're not
not
doing
the
it. You
law.
and I are you and I are not lawmakers, and I'm not
Yeah,
interested in making any
yeah.
laws.
So it has to
No.
be. So even the law
Yeah.
understands that it has to be something that comes from the father. You know what I'm saying? Because the law basically says do what you want as long as you pay the child support.
Well, I mean, but yeah, but that may be only because no one's come up with anything better, right? Because this problem isn't one that we've been
No, because
having.
it's a very being a parent, as I know you say just be there, but it's not a finite thing. Money's a finite thing, right? How much you make, that's a percentage of how much you make. That's a finite thing. You know what I'm saying? How much time should you spend with your kid? Should it be an hour, 2 hours? All these are things that they're very subjective. You know what I'm saying? So like, the law can't get involved in that because
Well,
it's
no.
too
So
much
the
to
so the
enforce it.
reason the law even got involved was because this is something that started happening however many years ago. But we're not talking about thousands of
Yeah,
years. We're talking about this is
recently.
this whole thing about the
Maybe in the
law.
future they'll figure it out. Maybe in the future there may be a time, but I'm saying for now it has to be
Well,
organic. And I think example is
organic.
the
Yeah,
best way.
that's what we're doing. That
Yeah,
you and
I
I
think
are agreeing on this issue.
example is the best way. And I think if you've got people that are reaching out to you, that's great. And I think if anybody gets anything from this, that's great. And I think, but I think one thing I know about society is we live in a kind of like it's a follow society, right? Like if you stand on your own, you're kind of like ostracized a little bit. But once everybody starts doing it, it becomes normal to some degree, right? Like for instance, everybody didn't want to wear masks. Now we wear masks. It's acceptable to wear a mask now, right? You can walk into a bank with a mask, right? I'm not gonna. I have a point. I have a point. You can walk into the bank with a mask. Here's my point: is like this is what we need to make with fatherhood. We need to make it more of a thing, more of like I say, make it less acceptable to just walk out
Yeah,
or abandon. You know what I'm saying? So
that's
it
it.
has to be seen as a thing, and maybe there needs to be resources and money in some of these areas where they're impoverished, and for young fathers to be like, look, hey, what if a father in I don't know where these people are calling you from, whatever, but say for instance a father wherever he is, he's like, I go to this place. He's coming to you, but maybe, but what if he can go to a place and like, I don't know what to do. I don't have a job. I'm still in school. Like, and they can kind of give him advice, not like how to be a father, but just like, okay, we can get you on this training thing.
Yeah.
We could do this, and you know what I'm saying. And those are the things that I'm missing. I think support.
So I can answer that question. The question you're asked, because it's a question that you're asking. You're saying why are there not more support systems for young fathers? And the answer is because currently there are not enough young fathers asking for the services. Because currently the society doesn't make it so that doesn't hold them accountable for their actions, right? For the pregnancy. So you and I are currently doing it where we're saying whoever's watching this now knows that these two grown men have given this enough thought so that they now say, oh, I see, okay, I'm super clear. I trust Parris, I trust Ricardo that it is important, and I listen to their conversation, and I am going to be there, right? So when more men do this over and over again, then when they go out to the community and say we need resources, the community begins to see that there are a percentage of them, and so that maybe some of the money needs to be moved away from one place to the other.
Yes and no. I do agree. I know men. Men are not known for asking for anything. That's a
historically, only historically.
Historically, no, but historically, but that's part of what you're saying, right? You're saying that there's not enough services because there's not enough men asking for help.
Meaning in the future they will. I mean, if I have anything to do with it in the future, they will.
So part of that might be saying it's okay to ask for help. It's okay, even as a man, to ask for help when you need it. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if that's 100% of the problem, because sometimes I just think to myself, in our society, that's a whole different discussion. But like where we put money and how we distribute money and all that stuff is, like it is hard, especially in this country, because healthcare, mental health, like.
No, but you're getting into the details of it. I explained it. It makes sense. What I'm saying makes sense. And besides, do you ask for help, Parris?
No, do I ask for help? Not really, because one. Like in what way though? You have to.
What do you mean in what way? Do you, if you ever need help, do you ask for help?
Yeah, like what? Like if I need a tool, I need you to help it. Yes, I ask for help. But there's been some ways, man. I've never asked for help in emotional ways. What's that?
You're saying that men don't ask for help. I ask for help, and I know that you ask for help
to a degree. But I'm saying men are not, as we know, and even I'm sure you have books on this. Historically, and even now, are less likely to come forward with certain things.
Yeah, but I don't understand. I don't understand where you're going with it.
My point is that men. No, but the point is that men. What I'm saying is that you're saying that the reason that these services are not available because men don't. Not enough young men request them, and I'm saying that half of that problem I believe to be true, because men, regardless of if they do need the help, are less forthcoming to go seek the help than maybe a woman would be.
But that's historically. My point being that you and I are changing that, and you and I are saying to other men, it's okay to ask for help.
We're talking about young men. So I don't know where young men are at.
We're telling them. So let's talk about young men that don't have fathers or father figures in their life. That's what you and I are doing right now. We're telling men that it's okay to ask for help. We're telling men that they should make themselves responsible.
But I'm saying, do young men ask for help?
Well, once this message gets out there enough, people begin to realize that they can and they should and they do, and eventually they do. Of course.
So that's what I'm agreeing. So that's what I said earlier. I said men need to feel like that, because men need to be able to feel like, one, they can ask for help, and it's okay to ask for help, right? Because I think no matter what has changed, there is a little bit of a preconception about what a man is and what a man isn't, right? Like, so even though a man might leave his kid, and somebody might be like, well, that's not, a real man wouldn't leave their kid, right? But also, some men don't ask for help. Some men have other issues.
So the advice you're giving to young men is ask for help. That's it. Done.
the
No, like
advice I'm
we
giving is
don't
that,
need to get into a
they,
philosophical discussion as to how things might be or might not be. No, it's super simple. The only thing that you and I are doing right now is helping young men, and you're saying all great things. It's just that I think where I clash with you is
hmm,
where you want to take a philosophical and like sort of try to address it all at the same time, and I'm saying no, I don't think so. I don't think that that's what we need right now. I think we need some very simple, clear-cut rules, and you're a perfect example of clear-cut rules. You made yourself responsible for all of your children, the children that you have had, you care for, and you spend time with them, and you love them, and you protect them, and you teach them. You are the model dad. So don't worry about anybody else. Don't
well,
worry
listen,
about what.
I try, yeah.
Wait, no, wait. Don't worry about what other men may be doing. Don't worry about the rich man is doing, what the poor man is. Don't worry about any of that. What I'm asking, and the reason I wanted to have this conversation with you is because I know that you're a good dad. So just commit to that and tell people what you think is best, right? What
But
you think is best.
yeah. But
You've been saying.
I do, but I do sometimes think about out the realms of myself though. Like I do, it does matter to me how other people, struggles that other people maybe go through. It
No,
does
I mean
matter.
it does. Well, yeah, but that's not what this conversation is about. Yeah, like everything. Like I understand where you're going with it, but my point is, Parris, that you are a man that is showing other men how to be an amazing man. This is my whole point, this entire conversation. You're
Mm,
showing other men what can, and especially other black men. I mean, for
mm,
me, this is fascinating. I'm a Hispanic man, you're a black man, and we're telling
mm,
our Hispanics and black brothers, guys, you can ask for help. You can be a dad. You can be an amazing stepdad that considers his stepson his real son. I mean, you don't beat your wife. I don't beat my wife. You don't beat your children. I don't beat my children.
mm,
Like all of these things. This is what we're telling men out there. Why? Because you and I are trying to make a change. Because there's not a million of these conversations being had at all. At all. Most fathers that I meet don't want to have this conversation. If we're not having these conversations with our, among us ourselves, how are we creating change? And the change that you seem to be referring to, that I know that I want to see in the very near future, happens right here, with us being, with us being, what's the word? Adamant, no, strong, with feeling
mm,
strongly about what we're saying. Its values. What is the word I'm looking for? Right? With us saying this is the way it should be. Right? Be there for your
mm,
child because he or she absolutely needs you. Right?
mm,
You're saying, Ricardo, never mind the research. Fuck the research. The point being here that we know what can be done and why, right? We
mm.
know we can do it. We know we can be those amazing fathers. And we know how, look at your son, man. You said it yourself. Because of everything that you did, he calls you on Father's Day. Who knows
Mm.
what other amazing things he
Mm.
does
Well, he can
because of
call
the
me
man.
for support. Yeah, and I feel proud that he can call me for support, and I'm able to give him support and direction for the most part. And I'm very honest with my children. Like even with all that's going on right now, sometimes you don't know. But yeah, like I agree with that. I do think there needs to be just like I guess the most part it's all those things and just setting an example to kind of elevate men and that so we don't have
Yeah.
men that feel it's acceptable and men can also be a support system for other men, not older men but like even their peers be like you have a child, that's we're all going to be in this together, we're going to help you, blah, not be like give you advice about the opposite way, which I don't think is good. So hey, hopefully I hope somebody gets something out of this. But it's not easy. There's no rule books. I don't know what the percentage of men are. You probably might know more of this. Going forward in the future, like from historically with the same ratio, are there more fathers? Do kids have more two parent fathers? Do they have more two parent relationships, or are people
So
two
there's,
parent households
yeah,
or
no, unfortunately,
families?
I,
It's
I
less.
forget. No, I don't. I think that the divorce rates are quite high, and I think the single parent homes are quite high still. What I do know is this is what has changed over time. Men who are spending time with their children report being happier. Research shows that they're living longer. Men that do spend time with their children or that are engaged more than before. For instance, right? That's a
Yeah,
finding, right? If you
that
look
I
at
can see.
the Pew Research Center will show that. So not so the men that were home before. Let this is an insight. So say 60 years ago, men were spending time at home with their children, and let's say that like per week they might have been spending say 5 hours, whereas today that number has increased substantially. Don't ask me what it is now, but right. But now let's say for three times, maybe like 15 hours per week that today's father is spending with their child. Um, and there are more fathers staying at home than ever before in those two parent families that now stay at home to get taking care of the children than ever before. I think that would have really probably been frowned upon, 60 or 70 years ago. So there are changes happening, but I think, like you said, we need a lot more of it where this information is everywhere and everyone is aware. And I think that then our next step is for this information to be out there to the extent that people know, but maybe they're still abandoning their children, but they know that they shouldn't. That's a big next step, right? That everybody knows, but still they abandon, because eventually after that everybody knows, and there's a whole lot, and then the percentage of abandoning gets lessened.
Sometimes you have to look into it as well, though, because the thing about the abandonment is like there's things between the abandonment, and that's
Yeah,
the
that's a lot.
complicated part of it. It's not just
Complicated.
as simple as like I just decided I don't want to be there.
No,
There's
no.
so many other little reasons why they would be there, and that's
The,
and that's the part that takes support and help, because yeah, there are going to be parents that just I'm scared, I want to
the,
run,
the
but
first
there's other
change,
things.
yeah, the first change seems to be that everybody collectively is aware of the fact that men are responsible for their children. That would be the first, and then you're right. And then we need to look at why men after that are still abandoning their children. But that collectively everybody knows that men are responsible for their children and should not leave them.
Mm.
Paris, I
All
think
right,
it has been
yeah,
an
we've
awesome
had a good talk.
conversation.
No problem. All right,
Thank you so much
hope
for
this is
sending.
helpful.
Yeah, very
All
helpful. I am
right,
100% sure. Thanks, man. Have a great
no
night.
problem. Take care.